right. All right. Check. 1 2 1 2. We are live and alive. All right, cool. So I'm trying a little bit different of a setup today with the microphone and the camera. So hopefully things look a little bit crisper. Okay? Crisper. Give people a few minutes to get in here as I change some banners. Didn't realize that that's what this was called. We may not be able to. Oh, there we go. A. Nichols worth. All right, cool. All right, so there we go. Now we got everything back to the way that we wanted it. So I'm going to start this recording here, and we'll get started here in just a second. All right, let's do it. Hey, everybody, welcome in. It's another episode of A Nichols Worth. I'm your host, Keaton Nichols, of course, trying out our new camera setup. Is this HD? Can I look this way? Can I look that way? Just trying to figure out the calibration here. Thank you. I appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight, everyone who will tune in tonight. Make sure you give this a share on your timelines as soon as you get an opportunity, because you never know who might want to join in the conversation. While you all are here as well, make sure you follow and subscribe to the show. It's called A Nichols Worth. It's down in the bottom left corner. You can follow that name at Spotify, Anchor, or YouTube. Easiest way to find the podcast on the go. And happy Friday to everyone who is listening out there live as well. It's the last day of April. This month and this year are both flying by at this point. But at any rate, we're about a third of the way through 2021 after a 2020 that seemed to kind of come and go very fast, of course, because of one coronavirus and the way that it has changed just about everything that we do, every aspect of the way that we do business. Pretty soon, by the way, cities are going to start lifting restrictions, and I want to know how people kind of feel about these lifting restrictions over the next couple of months. We've talked about it a little bit here on the program, but I want to know what you think. Like, what is the actual danger that you perceive there from doing that? Do you feel that there's no danger? Do you feel like it's been too long? Because a lot of us have been kind of tucked away in our particular corners of the world for most of the last year and some change. And it does appear that at least halfway through the year that many of the restrictions that kind of reshaped the landscape and reshaped the conversation about a lot of things, those restrictions are going to be ending in in a couple of months, rather, halfway through the year. And I'm wondering if people kind of have fears and hesitations about what that could mean for their lives, and if so, what they are. Other big news in Keaton Nichols' world, I was vaccinated this week. Yes, I'm officially a part of the vaccinated crew, I guess, if there is such a thing. On Wednesday, went ahead and did this. Now, this was not an easy decision for me to make. I just turned 30 years old, so I'm still considered in the younger group of those that this virus has been affecting. There's been a lot of questions, obviously, and a lot of hesitancy surrounding a mass-produced vaccine. I talked a couple of shows ago. If you guys want to check out that pod as well, give me some listens on that. But it was certainly not an easy decision to make. I wanted to talk about it a little bit tonight before we got into our other news, because I felt that maybe it could help some others that might be having some hesitations about this very thing as well. And so one of the first things is, that I thought about in trying to decide whether or not I was going to get vaccinated or not, is the fact that, history tells us that nothing like this has really gone down before. I'm talking about the vaccination effort. There has been a worldwide virus, a respiratory virus, almost 100 years ago. Many people have heard about the Spanish flu and its effect on the world, and how many millions of people that were affected and that were killed by that virus 100 years ago, not just in this country but everywhere. During the course of that virus, there was no vaccine that was developed in, relevant or significant enough time to actually give to people and give to the people. It just wasn't there. And so this is the first time that we've had a vaccination effort this wide. Maybe not. Isn't the first time that we've seen a virus affect this many people, but it is certainly, the first time that we've seen something on this scale, vaccination wise. So that kind of gave me some hesitation. Like here's a vaccine that everyone has to take, or at least the vast and overwhelming majority of people have to take, in order for us to snuff this thing out. And we don't really have a lot of research on how this is going to affect anyone long term. We developed this thing in a matter of months, a process that normally takes years. So that was scary to me. And that certainly impacted for a long time, I think, my decision to, kind of want to get vaccinated. It's kind of on the fence. But I'd started to, sort of put together, some of the numbers behind it, not just the statistics and the deaths and things like that, but I'm talking about common sense math. Every once in a while, you have to do a little common sense math. And I talked about COVID sense in season 2, how important it is for us to develop a common sense about COVID that I dubbed COVID sense. Anyway, this is one of those times I had to apply, some sort of form of COVID sense, because watching these post-apocalyptic movies and TV shows and playing zombie video games and things like that obviously was not, the most comforting thing to do when considering what to do in a pandemic. So the reason why I decided to get vaccinated is because I did the common sense math. On one side of the equation, I had to be concerned about, spreading and or contracting this deadly virus that has already proven its strength against human beings, against the human race. It's already done that. So this is not the speculation of a virus. This is not a virus that's been found in one small remote area or part of the world that could potentially become an issue if it were ever to get out. This is not a virus that we have so little data and information on that we don't really know what the patterns and the spread is going to be like. We know enough about this, and we've seen this virus kill literally millions of people in this world over the course of a year. Just 1 year. But those are things that I think people already kind of know. If you're alive and you're breathing right now and you're conscious enough to be listening to this program, then I think you know and you understand the strength and the power of this virus. So that's really what's on one side. And not getting vaccinated may seem like something that is keeping myself out of the possible mystery mix of what could be in that vaccine, right? Like it keeps me out of that conversation. But there is still that virus out there. And we might not know what the vaccine does, but we definitely know what the virus does. That was a very important factor in deciding this. That for the foreseeable future, I may just have to kind of go around. If I decide not to get vaccinated, I may just have to kind of go around and kind of settle with the idea and with the issue that I could contract this virus. I could. Granted, the chances may be smaller and smaller, but still the chance is out there. And until enough people are vaccinated, that chance is a still significant chance. So that's what's on one side of the aisle. The other side of the equation here was a vaccine, an unproven vaccine, in terms of what the long-term effects are, of course. But what it has already proven in the short amount of time that we've experienced it is that it is overwhelmingly effective at preventing said virus that we just talked about. It's like, man, this is a really great cause, but I don't know. This isn't the kind of thing that logic could exactly cut out evenly. So whenever I did the math, I put all the pieces on the table, and I said, this is kind of like a rock and a hard place kind of thing. I don't feel great about either decision. And so I opted for what made the most sense. I opted for what was the right thing to do. I can protect myself. I can protect those that I come in contact with, and I can also protect myself from future exposure of getting extremely sick potentially because of the coronavirus. Now, maybe I have antibodies. Maybe, I would have never gotten sick in the first place. Who knows, right? Maybe. But after I did the math, this is what the right thing to do was in my mind. I didn't jump for joy, and say, yay, I'm healed. I'm so much better now. That's not how I felt. Just kind of felt like I was doing my duty, doing my civic duty to protect those around me. Now, that's something that I don't have to worry about. And I don't have to worry about endangering others. You don't have to necessarily be this cheerleader for the vaccine. You don't have to be this person that praises governments or big corporations or pharmaceutical companies. It was amazing how many people, that I saw in my inbox afterward, and I don't mean this in a negative connotation. They were starting conversation, and I think that that's good. We should continue to do that. But it was amazing how many people jumped in my inbox and basically said, don't you know, man, the vaccine is like the product of the man. If you take the vaccine, you're playing right into their little game, right? Like you're giving yourself up, so to speak. You're allowing yourself to be a lab rat, an experiment. There was a lot of that went on, and I can understand people's fears and hesitations about that kind of thing. I don't think that this is a big conspiracy, though. As I've mentioned before with things related to the coronavirus and conspiracy, the one thing that we have to monitor and recognize in this, usually conspiracies are to the advantage of, one group or another, or to the severe disadvantage of a targeted group, etc. Or there's some sort of general idea of control for a specific number, specific people like presidents or world leaders or rich people or whatever, right? And it's very hard to identify a group of people that has not been spared from the acts of coronavirus. If there's any reason for me not to believe, or for me to believe rather, that there's no conspiracy here, it's because everyone got hit. Everyone got hurt because of this. And so an effort to get everyone off the schneid like that doesn't scream conspiracy to me. Is it unproven? Is it do I have a mistrust with medicine to an extent? Yeah, of course. But sometimes there are bigger things at play. That's all. So that was the decision that I made. In short, it's a short story that I made, I guess, really long, but that was kind of the decision that I made. And I would encourage everyone else to make their own decision when it comes to this vaccination. Do not just take it because you heard someone on TV say that it was safe, or that you heard a commercial or a PSA. Do your own research. You have to feel comfortable within your own mind about what you decide to do on this. The general sphere of things might be telling you, the general sort of culture of things might be telling you, hey, get vaccinated. It's the right thing to do. And it may be the right thing to do. But I think we have to practice making these decisions for ourselves and not trusting some of the voices that can be on our TV screens, some of the voices that can be on our phones, et cetera, right? We can't continue to overly rely on these people to make decisions in our own lives. So go out there, get vaccinated if that's what you feel comfortable doing. I still think that I still think that people should get vaccinated. That's just my personal opinion. But I don't think that anybody should be forced to, and I think that everyone should decide that on their own. And I think when you think about it, you come away with the right solution. It's not costing you anything, of course, but that's not what this is about. It's about kind of doing the right thing, and so we could have a virus that wipes out even more people. We could have a vaccine that we don't know the effects of just yet. You have to weigh that decision out. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Cameron Contreras, I know him. He comments in on the Facebook. He says also could be the wrong thing to do. You're right. It could be. I have no idea. I guess what it came down to is that I had fears of both. So I had fears of taking the vaccine, and I had fears of, the virus itself. Like, I really did. Like, I was like overly sanitizing my hands, like washing my hands, like every time I go to a store or a Giant Eagle, whatever. It was always on the back of my mind. Anytime I stepped out of the house, like I felt like I was in a horror film, like a zombie film. Like if I touched the wrong thing or if somebody coughed on me the wrong way, that could be it, right? Dunsico bursts. And so that was my fear on the one side. My fear on the other side of the vaccines was kind of like big question marks. It was like something could happen. something could, I don't even know what that thing is. Like, I don't know if like my, there's going to be like a third ear that grows out of my forehead or something. I don't know if I'll just have soreness in my arm, right? Like there's this wide range of things and unfamiliarity that I have with vaccines that's creating these sort of phantom issues in my mind, right? Like I still have fear, and fear is still real rather. But like I said, whenever I did the math, the numbers kind of don't lie there. The numbers say you might not exactly know what's going to happen with this vaccine, but you kind of know what's going to happen if you're unvaccinated and you're caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the wrong germ, or the wrong cough, something like that. So you're absolutely right. It could end up being the wrong decision at the end of the day, but this decision for right now, I feel like it's the right thing to do. And yes, I will be going to Florida next week on vacation, so probably best to be vaccinated for that. Most definitely appreciate the comments. If you have a comment, make sure you leave it right in the comment section. I did want to talk this week because Biden had a big speech this week. Want to talk a little politics tonight. Biden did have a big speech in front of Congress. It's the first speech, congressional address, I guess you want to call it. It's not really a speech, but his first congressional address this week in front of kind of an empty chamber of Congress. It's just kind of how you do things today. But anyway, it was pretty good. I don't know, like that, that was kind of what I felt about it. It was pretty good. I wasn't like so moved. When you see enough of these speeches and stuff like that, you realize that these are huge moments of these are huge moments in the image of the character that we're looking at, right? Like, this is a big moment for Biden in his administration. These speeches usually don't reveal to us anything that we didn't already know. It's more of a summation of kind of what's been happening. And Joe Biden's been in office for about 100 days. And so they figure it's about time that we do this. All presidents do this several times during the course of their terms. Just to kind of keep everyone on the same page. But the speech itself, as a political moment, I decided to kind of break this down and figure out what exactly we could get out of this and what exactly is happening to the political temperature of the country. Remember, we're getting out of, the last 4 years, we had Donald Trump as president. And that made it very difficult to kind of predict the weather, if you will, to use that kind of analogy. It made it very hard to predict the weather. Trump is a man who has a lot of personal opinions. He's very, sort of stout in who he is as an individual, and is not really good at representing other groups, Republicans, Americans, Western society, whatever, right? Like, he's not good at representing those things. He's only good at representing himself. So the speech that we saw this week was from a new leader who has his own set of flaws and issues, we know, of course. But he doesn't have that one, right? Joe Biden has been a company man for a long time when it comes to politics, when it comes to public service. I was going to say public enemy, but when it comes to public service, he has a lot of experience with this. So his entire life, he's been representing other people or other interests and things like that. It's part of what makes him a pretty savvy politician. Not always a good one or one that I believe in, but certainly makes him a savvy one. But anyway, the speech is pretty good. It's kind of a sign also that things are kind of returning to normal, normal. After some relative chaos. It's hard for me to feel good about that. I had so much criticism about the system even before Donald Trump ever arrived in Washington that it's hard for me to say that a return to normal is something that is good. But anyway, the speech itself kind of surrounded a variety of topics. He talked about a number of things. He boasted his accomplishments in the first 100 days. Truthful ones that he didn't have to over-exaggerate or lie about. He kind of, noted the country's resilience in the time of coronavirus, a major storm, all things considered. He also summarized rather his plans to spend these trillions of dollars on this infrastructure plan, and other related items, let's call it, at the expense of some of the richest people in the country. It sounds pretty good. Sounds like something that most people in the country can get with and can get behind. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of the polling data afterward, depending on who you looked at, showed different numbers and things like that. But the general consensus was that a majority of the country felt some sort of positivity about what was going on in that speech. Not that that speech is necessarily a direct roadmap for what's going to happen, but a majority of the country was feeling what Joe Biden was saying. That's progress, right? Somewhat progress. Biden's vision for the country was one that appealed not just to his base and to people on the left. He wasn't just feeding them the stuff that they wanted, but if you noticed, if you watched, if you listened, you kind of saw that Joe Biden was also kind of reaching his hand across the aisle and saying, hey, look, you Republican people over there, you on the right, those that have criticized me and my campaign, hey, we're here for you too. We're here for you and we're here for your constituents. We'll take them. We'll certainly take them in terms of votes, but it was this vision that seemed to try and pull both of these sides together. After having 4 years of sort of divisive politics that really was like one side or the other kind of wins, right? It's very anti-American. We'll talk about that. After having that sort of chaos for a number of years, you now have a president that seemingly is like, hey, we can all sit at this table, right? Like, I know you have your issues over there, but we can come together on this. I don't know, the infrastructure thing, right? Stuff like that. I mean, it's a part of like Biden's image. It's a part of who he is as a president. When we talk about these things leading up to an election, well, the electability of Joe Biden and the likability of Joe Biden. Well, this is where those metrics come into play, right? There might have been more progressive choices on the left, like people like Bernie Sanders, people like Elizabeth Warren. There might have been more choices like that on the left, but when the Democrat Party is strategizing down the line, and they're building a strategy for how to win the election, they're also building a strategy for how to actually get things done if their candidate wins. And the strategy even before the election for the Democrats when it came to Joe Biden was, let's try and put this moderate old white man up here. He's going to appeal to a lot of people on face value, just of course according to who he is. As a white man, he's going to appeal to a lot of people on the other side. They're not going to instantly reject him because of his image or because of his identity. So we have that going for us, kind of like they did Barack Obama, kind of like they did Hillary Clinton. So we have that going for us. But in addition to that, Joe Biden's not trying to beat anybody up on the other side. Joe Biden's a strong Democrat, has been so his entire life. But what the Democrats basically decided was that the anti-Trump thing to do was to run a candidate like Joe Biden that was only concerned and that only had value in uniting the country in some kind of way. That's what the Democrats wanted to do here with Joe Biden. We're seeing that play out now. No, it's not any more exciting. I wanted more progressive things to happen too. I wanted more progressive candidates to be in the forefront, not because I like progressive politics, because I want things done in this country. I want things unearthed and I want people uncomfortable. Progressives sometimes do that. But I think for Joe Biden, if this is the strategy to kind of bring everyone together, that's good, because it's very unlike the last 4 years, which we all hated. Most of us did, at least. But it brings with it some issues. There are some issues with this, right? And one of the issues that there is backburnering of social issues, like race relations. These issues kind of get pushed to the side because, as we've talked about time and time again when it comes to issues of race, these are uncomfortable conversations because a lot of the issues are core issues. They're fundamental issues. They're issues, that I think we would have to totally derail our systems of normalcy in this country as a way of addressing. And for a lot of people, that's very uncomfortable. When we think about unifying the country, when we think about uniting, you don't bring up the things that make the two opposing sides or opposite sides, whatever. You don't bring up things that make them uncomfortable. And the fact of the matter is, I've seen this happen 100 times. If we are going to come together and be united as a country, a very diverse country that we are, but if we're going to be united as a country, things like addressing race relations and racial issues in this country will be pushed further and further to the brim, to the edge. I'm not saying that, Biden doesn't care about black people. or something like that, right? But if the strategy for the Democrats, if they know that a winning strategy is to unite people in the post-Trump era, then that's what they're going to do. Never mind what could actually happen to social issues along the way. These are the consequences of running a particular candidate. Now, if Biden was a little bit more liberal, let's say, or if he was a little bit more, along the socialist line of thinking politically, I think his administration wouldn't be this administration that's attempting to sort of get everybody in on the same boat, right? It would be an administration that was hitting hard its opposition. It would be hitting hard what Trump has brought the last 4 years. And they'd be focusing on forwarding their agenda. We're not going to get that, right? We're not going to get that. What the Democrats have identified Trump politics is toxic. And the Republicans should be on that train, too. They should be identifying Trump's behavior as toxic, too, but they're not quite there. We'll talk about that on another show. The Democrats kind of identify Trump politics as, kind of being this thing where, division is strength, which is very anti-American, by the way. Like that, I don't know where they get that from, but anyway, division is strength, right? Like let's divide up the country into those that believe this and those that believe that. Let's separate those two groups out. And instead of bringing those two groups together, let's super encourage those that think like we do. And let's do everything that we can to sort of throw dirt on the other side. Division. It makes us stronger. That's the Republican message. And under Trump, that just got supersized, right? So it encourages. They figure this Trump brand of politics is dividing people. It encourages all these representatives to be stalwarts of progress, moving back, if you will, to a time, making America great again, moving back into a time when social progress and social reforms hadn't exactly happened yet in this country. That's kind of how Trump politics is branded. Trump politics and GOP politics, like Trump politics and Republicans, they don't always line up, but there's a few commonalities in there. But anyway, that's Trump politics. For the Democrats, Biden politics means, hey, let's find some common ground. Social issues are still a top priority here, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to force anybody to do anything here, right? We have to all be on the same train, the same Amtrak train. And so that's the strategy, right? It's again, two-party politics kind of controlling the conversation more than anything going on here. It's difficult to kind of think what would happen if some of those caps were released. But anyway, Biden wants to do this the good old fair American way, and his speech this week kind of told us that that's the direction that he's going to be headed in. That's unfortunate, I think, for a lot of us that have been wanting something more to happen during the course of this administration. Take note that with a more moderate stance like this, issues that we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks, for example, on this program, like police reform, will be slow if, change rather to those institutions will be slow if it happens at all. And it won't be because there will be politicians that will be too fearful to say or to do the right thing. It'll simply be a strategy focused in winning and losing. The Democrats want to win elections too. They have important elections coming up, in the cities and municipalities this year, but next year, the midterm elections, they've got to figure out a way to keep seats. They've got to figure out a way to get more mayors, Democrat mayors in the cities, and more Democrat governors into mansions. They got to figure out a way to get more, Democrats to win seats in Congress. I mean, I know it's just 2021, like we just got started with this administration, but there's already going to be a huge push for what happens in the midterm elections. The Democrats still have to appear to be a particular thing. And if they can somehow sort of mesh being anti-Trump with whatever the future of the Democrat Party is, that seems to be the middle ground that they want to settle on. And Joe Biden is the perfect person to sort of parade them through said middle ground. American freedom. We talk about American freedom in different ways. This is another way that it has sort of reared its head, and it's something that's important to pay attention to, too. American freedom has allowed its citizens to decide what kind of country they want to live in. That's right, all the features and facets of this country, unlike other countries that were determined by cultures and traditions and things like that, that eventually kind of led to, governments and stable systems and stuff like that. America has always kind of been made up of the ideas of those that have at least been allowed to shape its progress. Allowed to shape its progress. That word is big here whenever you're talking about the development of America. But anyway, eventually we have to look at some of these structural issues that we have in this country. When we look at issues like this and say, well, it's going to be great that Joe Biden's going to get some stuff passed and he's going to spend some money and the Democrats are going to score a huge win here. For many people, that might be a good thing. But whenever we talk about the issues like, reforming police and fixing racism in medicine and equal opportunities for children in schools, things like that, those issues don't exactly seem to be affected as much by the games that we talk about here, by the big speeches that we have here. I know Biden spoke about like free pre-K and other things like that will hopefully change some things down the line. But at the end of the day, if the focus is on bringing everyone together, then the powers that be are going to basically wait until the country decides that that's what they want to do. And eventually we have to look at some of the structural issues that we have in this country as being so, because that's what the people want. That's what the country wants. They want a Donald Trump, and they want some of the structural issues that we have with this country to continue. That's very troublesome. But if you're like me, you know a lot of people, probably too many people at this point in America, that don't exactly embody that reality, and they don't want it to be their future. I don't want it to be my future. So I think that if there's something that we as young people can do, if there's some influence that we can have on this situation that's going to be impactful, it's to be change agents. It's to be the ones that are continually doing the work to replace those that we need to replace, those that have these old mentalities that need to go. And we can more so begin to turn this country into, or this country rather can reflect the kind of country that it actually is, that we know that it should be. Not the old hat traditions that we're trying to hang on to. But what is the country now? What is it when we look out at each other directly face to face? That's what kind of country we have now. So we may not be ready or geared up for these kinds of conversations. And maybe our criticism of the Biden administration in past years might have been different. We can now use kind of our newly found knowledge to help do something productive towards our change. Use that knowledge and that information for something productive instead of just criticism. So I'm still about that, and I think you all should be too. It's definitely a way to help pay attention to what's going on in the world. All right, that's it. That's all I got for this Friday. I appreciate the people for tuning in. YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, all of those websites. Search A. Nicholsworth and subscribe. Subscribe to the show or to the channel. Got a lot of great content coming up in the calendar year. Looking for some different collaborations for some folks around the country as well. So stay tuned for that. And we will be back on Monday, right? Are we going to be back on? Yeah, we are going to be back on Monday. Next week is vacation week, so we're only going to be doing 2 shows next week. But make sure you all tune in. Check out any episodes that you might have missed at A. Nicholsworth. Follow me on socials as well at Keaton D. Nichols as well. I'll see everybody on Monday.